Good day, dear colleagues. Unfortunately, we can't see each other in offline mode, but I hope the quality of video and audio will be satisfying and everything will be okay. So I'll demonstrate my screen. So today let's talk about hierarchy within a network, the influence of a state. My name is Viktor Anatolievich Osipov from People's Friendship University of Russia from Moscow. Greetings, everyone. So it's for networks in Global War 2020. Thanks for all organizers for that opportunity. So in this report, we focus on the communicational aspect of the modern social and political reality in the field of relations between the new types of organizations and traditional ones. But it is not only the social structures and states who's facing problems. It's also the modern science, which needs constant refresh in its language, terminological and methodological apparatus to be up to date and technologically equipped. So we try to touch upon a factor of state in a world of networks, some cases like social policy on orphans, on foster families, religious organizations, traditional organizations, some touch points of networks and hierarchical structures and process in social political sphere and public policy. And of course, the methodological approach to understanding and describing the nature of these interactions and their consequences. So, as I said about the new social and modern social reality, we saw how networks become a part of our lives, of the life of states, and they came to us. In 2008, the American Council of Foreign Relations and Office of the Director of National Intelligence published Global Trends 2025 and Transformed the World with the paragraph entitled A World of Networks. The authors emphasized what a great power came to international organizations and NGOs gathering resources and stakeholders into flexible and open structures with common goals. Furthermore, they note that a new set of social actors, super-empowered individuals, and even criminal networks increasingly will influence outcomes. That factors, new actors, game rules, the level of uncontrollability, and the possibility of using the new informational technologies for criminal purposes cause understandable concern among authorities and those in power now. So, but of course, the policy network concept and the networks themselves didn't reveal in 2008. Long before, a lot of scientists such as Rhodes, Marsh, Crumley, Tanya Burtell, and many others have made a great impact with the development of the networks approach, its implementation and distinguishing policy networks from other form of social communication. For example, you can see on the slide that the understanding of networks by Tanya Burtell. It's as a set of relatively stable relationship which are non-hierarchical, interdependent, sharing common interests. As a result, it's important, we got some kind of ideal model of communication and governance, not only elements and links between them, because it's every system looks like that, but the new vision of alternative way of social organization. The biggest problem was just the gap between the networks and hierarchical structures. For state, the situation is complicated by the difficulties of adaptation, systematic delays inherent in social systems, and political reactionism. So, in our case, it's in the world of networks. There are two ways for state for adaptation: change itself or use networks, become a stakeholder to save its power and effectiveness. As we can see, after 2 decades of 21st century, of the 21st century, states are not going to change their hierarchical nature, at least revolutionary. Some corporations, conservative political bodies, and religious organizations are in the same situation. Thus, the new problematic field is formed around complex relations between hierarchical institutions and networks. So, methodology. Speaking of methods, the study can be divided into three consecutive steps. First, well, we looked for cases in which many participants were involved in solving a common problem, and one of the participants had to be a state or rather powerful hierarchical structure. At this stage, we used the methods of including observation, content analysis, case studies, and interviews. Next, we analyzed selected cases through the prism of a network and communicational approach and the concept of political networks. After the first two steps, we recorded, and it's important, the cases of non-standard behavior and disruptions in the network, caused, in our opinion, by the internal differences of the participants, guided by different principles of management and behavior pattern. To capture these differences, we tried using different approaches, such as multi-level governance in network, hybrid approach, combining hierarchy and networks, and finally, heterarchy concept. So first of all, we tried to detect new structures. And the starting points for the study was monitoring the behavior of participants in network interaction in the field of social policy in Moscow and Russia, aimed at supporting foster families, transmitting their interests, as well as analyzing the results of this activity. That sphere has been chosen because of a crucial role of a trust, openness, and common goal. All these aspects are systematically important for networks, as you know. So on this slide, you can see a brief description of the first case. So the sphere of monitoring, as I said, a social policy in Moscow and Russian, where we find a network of communication and actors, stakeholders, aimed at supporting foster families. Type of this network is open issue network. Main goal is to reduce the number of children in orphanages, raise the quality of their lives, and reduce the burden on the state institutions. So the main stakeholders were public councils, state, NGOs, business, funds, religious organizations, foster families, and of course some individuals. The main hierarchical stakeholders, the stakeholder is state. In our case, the Department of Labor and Social Protection of Population. So networking was establishing of public council system and all Russian and Moscow foster families forum. It's the heart of a network. It was the heart of a network. So during the analysis, we found some new processes. There wasn't such processes before before this network and the public consoles. So the first one is the process of mitigating or dispersing the vertical impact, creating a buffer zone from a single family's level to reduce feelings of control and direct control. Simplification of policy implementation, increasing confidence in the authorities. The process, the process of vertical distribution of network relationships, and here I can say more. Let's look here. This is the example of vertical distribution of network relationships. This process began with the work of public councils. As you can see on the left side, in 2012 and 2013, the system, the network was quite poor. Some families tried to do something to face problem with the department. D is department, the triangle, to communicate with that, and F are foster families. And on the right side of the slide, as you can see, just in a few years, how changed the relations, the network. You can see the vertical distribution. So the interaction system in 2015 distributed by the appearance of many horizontal connections. The work of public councils made it possible to establish relations between families to receive feedback, identify problems, and timely inform. The organization of the All Russian and Moscow Foster Families Forum made it possible to establish strong ties between state organizations, public councils, private foundations, and NGOs. Horizontal ties at the top of the level reflect the intersectoral interaction of state structures and officials to solve problems identified at an annual forums. Vertical connections begin to play the role of a political entrance, new social elevators appear, and in practical sense, the principle of subsidiary is affirmed. So it's speaking of the third process, the involvement in publicity. So work in this update mode allows network to fulfill the tasks of implementing the state programs and presidential decrees. And as a result, you can see here huge network with strong ties and mutual trust is built now. The number of children in orphanages was reduced from 140,000 in 2010 to 47,000 and 242,000 in the end of 2018, as you can see in graphs. The number of government agencies working with children without parental care were reduced as well. But at the same time, it's important that alarming cases of disruption of the network were recorded. A difference in the effectiveness of the network of public councils. It means the public councils, which started their work from the previous organization in the neighborhood, were much more effective than public councils started from the directive or with help of state and authorities. Next, some decisions were made by the authorities without coordination and due implementation, which reduced the level of trust in public councils and families in 2016 and 2017. So the negative budget spending reports are revealed in these years as well. and some cases underway. Case number 2, since 2019, another field is examined, very interesting as well, with a very strict hierarchy to the network communication of religious organizations, especially the Russian Orthodox Church. Another example of strict hierarchy and conservative institutions becoming a part of networks and networking process. We detected increasingly growing amount of links and nodes, not only between churches and religious organizations, but civil society, business, state, and so on. With the beginning of restrictive measures to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus infection, this growth rate has been increased. It was like the seal of untrusting was broken, and in a few years, I guess we'll see a lot of differences in this sphere. It will be interesting to study. And the number 3, it's a supranational networks within European Union and the Eurasian Economic Union. Very interesting sphere as well. The first one, the EU, got into the spotlight as the first of its kind to implement network principles in its work and structures. For example, we saw it in the White Book of Governance. And the Eurasian Economic Union, on the other hand, makes such use of the similarity of principles. But it is interesting how much it will turn out to be implemented in the condition of the differences between countries in territory, resources, finance, population, and so on. It is a matter of mutual trust and interest, willingness to sacrifice one's position for the sake of the common goal, common good between the union members. So, understanding of behavior, it's a very important step and very, very hard, very. Here can be big discussion, but the world of networks, as we spoke before, is like shuffling new cards into a deck and putting them on the table by the new rules. Obviously, states do not want to give up their nature and interest and internal organization completely. So there are 2 ways for them. The first one is accepting its particle or partial changes, or to do what mankind does the best, adapt to the environment. So those are the new alternative for political evolution, as I can see it. So on this slide, you can see the left arrow is accepting its particle changes, and in political reality, usually it means administrative reform to implement the new way of managing and administration. For example, the Pemandu management system developed in 2009 in Malaysia to carry out administrative reform and increase the efficiency and competitiveness of the political system, which include networks methods or forming public policy centers. In Russia, administrative reform was started in 2003, which have continued to some extent to the present, as we can see in the last reports. So, as we saw, the use of networks and digital technologies is noted in almost all the main areas of reforms. But there is one problem, very, very important, with such an approach. Reforms often go hand in hand with dissatisfaction of citizens and instability at last for some political forces. that can push a state to another path, adaptation of the environment for itself, with the present preservation and sometimes even strengthening of the hierarchy and the centralization, involving the underdevelopment of network culture, the using of manipulative technologies, and so on. It's a right arrow. So during this step is an attempt to comprehend and describe relation between networks and hierarchy, which in the first place requires the choice of correct methodology and science approach or reveal approach to the study of identified problem. So for the few years we have been researching methodological fields and going comparative analysis of the various approaches and their heuristic potential with framework of the subject field. So there are on the slide there are three groups, large groups of approaches that were formed. First one reveals the essence of the phenomenon of networks interaction. Second one studies of the modern state, and third covers the describes of features of communication directly between hierarchical structures and the state and the network structures of society. Offers analytical and prognostic tools for a given subject field. It's a multi-level management hybrid approach, good governance concept, hierarchy concept, and others. The third group, in our opinion, is the most important for this research, since the scientific basis for the study and analysis of both political networks and the modern government is largely formed, as we can see, in the modern theoretical researches, and the time has come for their synthesis, using non-reductionist approach and taking into account the environment. So let's look closely at the heterarchy approach that we use in our research. And at first, a little bit fun, motivated video. I mean, fun in our context. Let's look. It's by Mike Lipkin, the North American motivator.
Hierarchy is so 15. Today, heterarchy rules. Heterarchy is when...
Sorry?
Hierarchy is so 15 years ago. Today, heterarchy rules. Heterarchy is where leaders and followers change depending on circumstances and clients. Heterarchy is defined by versatility, flexibility, adaptability, agility, and personal discretion.
So that was very motivating. But if you are a scientist or a student, for example, my students, if you trying to use this concept, in this view, it's more like business view. They just can't distinguish objects from the universe of all objects. So what is a heterarchy exactly for them? Political science. And when the students go into the internet, and they find this man, the Warren McCulloch, the founding father, the first used heterarchy concept in his work, Hierarchy of Values Determined by Topology of Nervous Nets in 1945. In such system, he revealed the possibility of a situation when A more than B, B more than C, but C can be more than A, which breaks a seal of hierarchy. Then a result of a series of meetings of the topic of feedback mechanisms and the circular causal system and biological and social systems in 1945 and 1946. Heterarchy concepts entered political science discourse and largely supplemented the tools of social science. It was used by our political scientists, classical ones like Carl Deutsch, David Easton, Gerbert Almond, and others. And the name of these works themselves reflected the relevance of networks research. For example, the work of Carl Deutsch, The Nerves of Government. So Where McCulloch left us a quite brief definition of the hierarchy and its principle, which in his opinion are considered in the ability of some complex systems to change their internal structure and to combine horizontal and vertical communication processes. But he played the role in transition of the term into different branches of the science. As a result, instead of the formed approach, there are a lot of separate studies using the concept of heterarchy in different understanding of it. It even can confuse a researcher and lead to difficulties in its use. As we can see here, heterarchy can be A, B, C, or can be unranked system, synonymous with network, the exact opposite of hierarchy, hybrid multi-level marketing NLL, system without summum bonum, as you can see on the figures on the right side, heterarchy with the highest level, on the bottom one. On the right, heterarchy without summum bonum and the highest level. On the left one, hierarchy looks like the network. So during our research, we said that heterarchy is a principle in which mechanisms of restructuring the managerial structure through the changing of ratio of network and hierarchical ways of communication form and form an adaptive environment for interaction between the state and civil society to increase the efficiency of political decision making, their implementation and distribution of resources interchange. So we use more political science, cybernetics, and political anthropology cases of using heterarchy concept. In this form, the concept of heterarchy is not opposite the hierarchy and not reduced to a network, but rather describes a phenomenon of natural change of ratio. The identification of such a mechanism using the example of Moscow social policy regarding the foster families made it possible to track changes and the effectiveness of the network of organization. For example, a violation of the hierarchical principle in several cases led to a decrease in confidence in the state or from other participants and foster families. Important that an introduction of hierarchical principles allows us to analyze cases of and social political conflicts in a new way, fixing any changes in the relations of hierarchy and networks. But still, it's a very disputable question and a lot of work in the future. So some conclusions, recommendations. The state and other hierarchies may enter a relationship and cause different types of influence for social and policy networks due to their differences. The touch points of networks and hierarchical structure and processes in social political sphere and public policy as an object of study is a key to understanding and predicting of social and political changes. Heterarchy concept in all its diversity is proposed as a methodological basis for the study of these subject fields. Some recommendation for researchers: using higher hierarchy concept, avoid of proximity to the concept of network and constant contrasting hierarchy. This will reduce its heuristic potential. So you can see, I hope your recommendations, full recommendations in the full text of my work. For academic society, the interdisciplinary communication and dialogue of scientists involved in the analysis of the problem field under consideration and using the concept of a heterarchy is extremely necessary. And the rule of thumb for heterarchy policy design is, it's in a practical context, a hierarchical analysis is a constant examination of the hierarchy and the network in the concept of solving a specific managerial problem and checking whether its correlation responds to the conditions of the environment. Also, for the effectiveness of the work, hierarchy principles, they should be directly fixed in the documents and agreements. So thank you for your attention. My name is Victor Osipov. Here is my email and web page. Thank you a lot.